Okay, well, good evening everyone, and thank you very much for taking time out of your busy evening to join us for this webinar. We appreciate it's probably one of the busiest times of the year and hope everyone's having a successful and productive harvest. We are joined by up to 25 people at the moment, and we expect to have more joining us as we progress. So my name's Amy Burke and I'm the Skills Manager at HDB, and I'm delighted to bring you tonight's webinar on training your team for business success. Now we've got the pleasure of having Jamie Butler, owner of HM Butler, and Isaac Van Herden, the Knowledge Exchange Manager for Dairy, in the room with me. And I shall hand over to them in a minute where they can present themselves. In the meantime, I'll cover some housekeeping. So we are presenting tonight this webinar, and it's a result of our supervisor workshops, and we ran these earlier in the year to target some of the areas around labour shortage and skilled labour. We know these are key challenges, and in many cases it's the elephant in the room. It's always going to be a challenge. So we set about doing 8 workshops to focus on these areas and highlight the common themes and how we can tackle those. These of which were team motivation, communication. And a lot of the delegates raised the challenge: how do I make the most of the labour that I've got and still keep them engaged without completely working them to the bone? So we've got some great examples of many of our levy payers who do this exceptionally well, and we're fortunate that these businesses are happy to share their experience with us. And tonight we're going to start with skills matrix and training with Jamie, who's very kindly offered to spend his time talking to everyone and sharing his experience. But keep alert, because we will be doing more webinars on some similar subjects around labour shortage and skills. So we had nearly 140 registrations this evening, so we're looking forward to welcoming more people. And for those who aren't able to join us, the presentation will be recorded and available on YouTube towards the end of the week. So James is going to run through his presentation with Isaac as a team duo. It will probably take about 30 to 40 minutes, and we welcome questions throughout. Your mics will be muted, but I will be keeping an eye on the questions coming in and pose them when we've got a comfortable break. So just type the questions in on your screen. You'll see the box on the right hand side. I'd like to thank Luke, who's our digital manager, sitting in the background doing his very best to ensure that everything runs smoothly. So if we do find any technical difficulties, please just bear with us and we'll get back on track as soon as possible. So just to remind you that we will be sending a link out to everybody following this with a link to the resources available that we described during this webinar, and also a link to our website where you'll find lots more information and further webinars. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Jamie and Isaac, who are going to introduce themselves. Welcome both.
Hello everybody, my name's Jamie Butler and I am a farmer from Hampshire. Name of the business is HM Butler Farms, or Mean Springs is our non-farming business. We're quite diversified, and we do have a large dairy herd. We've got 400 cows on the farm, and this has been developed over the years. Well, since going back to sort of 1930, when the farm was originally bought. At the very beginning of back then, I think Dad was milking around about sort of 25 cows, and over the years it's just developed and grown from there. The people side of the business has been extremely important throughout, but times have sort of changed quite significantly, as I'm sure that many of you on this call can imagine. In the old days, my dad used to come out to the tractor shed. There was probably around about 18 people on the farm, and they would stand by their tractors, and in the mornings he would go to each one of them and give the orders for the day. And when he'd done that in the morning, the people would go out to work. They would go and do what they were doing, and then come back the next morning and await further orders. This kind of worked extremely well, but it was very directive and very time sensitive and time requiring from my father's point of view. So I've been back in the business now since the mid-90s. So before that, I was running a training business in the fresh produce industry called management development services, which I think Christine Tackon, the grocery code adjudicator, is now one of the, I think she's the chair of the management development services. I'm really pleased to see that training program going very, very well. But in essence, the process that I've instigated over the years that I've been at home and learnt and instigated, it has been a complete opposite approach to what my father was doing. And that my aim on the business is to put as much control as possible at the absolute front of the business to the people that are actually doing the work. This doesn't come very easily to many people. It doesn't come without risks. But what we're going to do tonight through this webinar is just talk you through how you can perhaps go from being a very directive employer where you're doing all the telling people what to do and you've got all the knowledge, to developing your team so actually they're leading your business with your support and your backup as and when needed. I'm just going to hand over now to Isaac, who's going to introduce himself and tell you what he does as part of AHDB. Isaac's sitting here in a pink shirt as if he's just coming off holiday, which I always think is a really good sign of the business, to have a sort of casual, laid-back approach. So AHD must be humming tonight on your behalf.
Yep, and you can't see the shorts I'm wearing either, so I've definitely got a face for radio. So my name is Isaac van Heerden. I'm a Knowledge Exchange Senior Manager, specifically working with dairy farmers, but I also lead 3 teams. The team of dairy leaders who work with very large and progressive farms, working with the team of all year round guys and that work with that group of farmers, but I also lead the knowledge transfer, so the guys that create our resources, our calculators and things like that. I used to milk cows and had a particular interest in protocols and that sort of training, and so now I've moved into management of people. I really can see the benefits of that. We decided not to talk about the super over because otherwise we might have been here for a little while longer. So Jamie, over to you.
Lovely, thanks very much, Isaac. We're going to just talk very briefly through the webinar objectives. And I'm going to go through a short presentation in discussion with Isaac that's going to last around about 40 minutes. And you're welcome at any time to put your questions on the chat, so that if there's anything sort of burning that you want to hear more about, do that, and Amy will pick them up at the end, and we'll do our best to answer them. So the webinar objectives are, I think the first thing that we want to talk about is why training and development doesn't happen. What are the things that stop it happening in any business? And then, of course, what are the benefits of training and development? I mean, obviously, there's absolutely no point in doing it if there are no benefits. So those two things go hand in glove, and we're going to briefly discuss around them. We're then going to get into a bit more of the nitty-gritty, a bit about how you do it and what are the risks. And we're just basically drawing on very good management principles and standard best practice as to how you can do this. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with how do you manage it, because it's all very well putting these things into practice, but obviously there's got to be a way of managing what you're doing, what training you're putting in place, etc., etc. And there's a number of resources that AHDB have got now on the dairy side. Dairy Pro would be one of them, where you can actually record training and development, and that can be very useful too. So we'll be talking you through that. So just moving on to the next thing, Isaac.
So Jamie, yes, and I recognise that parlour. Is that how it always happened at Meon Springs? Hairnets and white coats?
Well, I mean, this is an interesting picture. You're absolutely right. It is our milking parlour, and as you can see, there's a group of people there milking cows, and they're wearing their hairnets and white coats, and all look very clean and sparkly, and etc., etc. This is quite often an image that people think that what training is about. Formal kind of sessions, very organised, very informed. Actually, what you're seeing here is not a training program at Meon Springs. This is a corporate event where we actually had Grant's Whiskey come down to come and milk the cows, and then they were making cocktails of with their milk afterwards, and all got thoroughly drunk and staying on the farm. So it's a lot of fun. But the point is training and development, this image of training and development being very formal and very organised is not how it has to be. It can be, and that can be a useful approach too, but it's not how it has to be. So the next question is,
so why doesn't it just happen? Surely it's just something that should just come naturally and happen.
well, I think one of the problems is that it's one of those jobs which is not necessarily urgent all the time. I mean, milking cows is something that has to happen every single day. And I'm just going to sort of run you through a little matrix, which actually I think this was originally developed by Eisenhower, who obviously was the chief commander in World War II and then followed on to be the United States president. But he basically sort of looked at the job roles that he was doing and split them down into whether they were urgent, not urgent, important, or not important. Now, clearly in his war days, there was an awful lot of urgent and important jobs. For example, German soldiers attacking his troops, etc., etc. But it was also quite important for him that there was stuff done to support his troops, which weren't in the urgent sort of fighting arena. So, but on a farm, coming back to more sort of civilian times, the kind of urgent and important jobs in your dairy farm generally revolve around your key operations. So, for example, your milking is a key operation, and that gets done every day. We've been milking cows on White Wool Farm since 1930, and there's not been a day that we haven't been able to achieve a milking, albeit we've had bad weather and parlour breakdowns and people not turning up, etc., etc. All the normal things that we all get. But we always make sure that those key operations get done. One of the things, though, is if you don't actually get outside that quadrant and go beyond the key operations, the business can't grow and develop. So, for example, finance, that's a key area where it's an important job, but it's not necessarily urgent. Actually, if finance starts becoming urgent in your business, then that's the conversations with the bank managers that are saying, well, you're not having any more money. That's a bad place to be. So finance, if you can do things like preparing your cash flow ahead and your budgets, etc., and keep it in a time span where it's not urgent, that's the best place to keep it. But of course, I mean, there's other things, sales and marketing, but people very much comes into this important and not urgent area. This whole people development thing is not necessarily seen, or very rarely seen, as an urgent job. The only time it tends to be urgent is when people are first starting out, and so they come in your milking pile and they can't put a cluster on the cow. Well, you know, it's pretty urgent that you get them trained up to do that, but most of the time, and to develop skills over and beyond that, it's in that sort of not urgent role. And of course, the other areas, strategy and innovation, would come into that area, and that's that.
So, Jamie, that looks like a lot of work to me. And how often do you do it, and you know, how do you go about doing it? How do you decide those things?
I guess it's probably a little bit more sort of subconscious than sort of conscious. It's just at the back of my head. We've got jobs to do ahead in advance. But one thing I do now, and I've been doing this for about 18 months, and it's been very useful on our farm. And just bearing in mind as we go through these slides that none of this is prescriptive. What works in my business may well not work in your business. There's a very good chance that many of you will have your own sort of systems in place, which cover the core principles of planning and making sure that stuff happens ahead, etc., etc. But
yeah, so you were talking about your dad earlier. You know, I've worked in family dynamics. What might be urgent or important to your dad might not be this, you know, to you, or saying what is important to one brothers and might not be important to the sister that's in the business. So how do you decide on this?
So absolutely. So what we do now is we actually have a monthly schedule that we put together, and so we take these different areas, like the sales and marketing, the strategy, etc., and we're basically making a schedule of what are the important jobs in that month, which gives us a kind of deadline to work to, but it also keeps things moving. So I'm just going to put up a couple of things that we do here, or have done to the end of June. So on the maintenance thing in June, we had to simplify feeding, make the old molasses tank into a water tank. The old molasses tank is near where the mixer wagon is. It's summertime, we're putting a lot of water in, and at the moment the teleporter is having to drive quite a long way to pick up water and put it in. So that was one of the jobs we had on. I have to confess, Isaac, have we done that job No, we haven't. but it's we have done the next one, was to ensure better cow comfort, take out the Yorkshire boarding and the netting, and that's made quite a lot of difference in yard 1 and 2.
I'm noticing there that in the top job don't have a name to it. The second one do have a name to it. Is that maybe it's a key area, it's in allocating a job to or a person to a job?
Names help. The other thing that I think is really important in those boxes is actually having a reason. So to simplify feeding, to ensure better cow comfort, if people can latch onto a reason for doing things, then they're more likely to do it. You walk in yard 1 and 2 this time of year in the heat of the day when it's all claustrophobic, and yeah, we put that down to the dairy team. They say, well, yeah, of course you need to do that. You need to do it now. Another one in the training area, to improve communication, plan for a way for Raphael to learn English. Raphael's one of the guys who's just started with us recently. His English isn't brilliant, so we're working on ways of actually improving that. And there's a bit of kind of creativity that goes into this, because it's not just a case of sending them on an English course. I mean, where do you go find an English course in the middle of Hampshire? I'm sure they're probably Polish English teachers, but actually there's a lot you can do online. And I mean, we've now just started using, or asked Raphael to start using a website called Memrise, which is just about learning English words. In the parlour, we're talking what the meaning for the word cow is, and what the meaning for the word cow poo is, and etc. etc. So slowly but surely, we're planning for him to be able to improve.
I've just got a quick question that's come through. So how do you monitor progress against your scheduled tasks? Do you share them with your team, or do they separate schedules? So it's all about that communicating what's gone well, what's not so well, what needs improvement.
Yeah, so I mean, this sheet that you got here, or this slide, is obviously a little bit more complex for the whole month schedule, and we just cross it off. We just put a yellow highlighter through each of the bits that get done, and we keep that so that over the time spell, sometimes I sit down with my brother and we look back and think, well, blimey, actually over the last 6 months we have achieved a lot, because it's very easy to think in any business you're actually not achieving a lot. Everyone's working very hard and you think you're not actually getting anywhere, but if you do make a bit of the note of it and cross off the things you're doing, it's quite sort of satisfying, really. It's a way of keeping yourself going and seeing how the business is developing with some sort of log and register.
And who can see this? How do you grade this in reality? How do you grade it? Is there a bit of software? Who can see it?
Well, I just put this on a PowerPoint slide and then print it out and give it out to the team. And the team involves the management team, who then share it with their team. So we have a herd manager. My brother runs all the crop enterprise. I run the estate, so that's my part of it. And also we have a person who runs the non-farming side of the business, and the non-farming covers fly fishing and yurts and glamping and self-storage and corporate events. So we're quite a diverse business. So actually that's another way of bringing people together in what is quite a diverse business. We're not a big business. I call myself sort of a big little business.
Excellent. Shall we move on and look at what are the benefits of developing a team?
Yeah, sure. So the benefits of developing a team, the bits I'm going to put up now, they're not necessarily everything that's working wonderful at Whitewall Farm. The bits we're going to put up now are kind of what you aspire to. So one of the things you're looking for, or if your team is developing, you'll find that you've got fewer mistakes in your business. Another of the things is that everyone's thinking. You'll have the whole team coming up with ideas and being involved and motivated. You'll have everyone being involved, like I said, so people thinking, being involved, fewer mistakes. These are just indicators that you're going down the right route. And you will have a better work-life balance, and everyone on the farm and the whole business will have a better work-life balance. Gone are the days it works for as long as they can, and it's busyness for busyness sake. That's just not effective anymore.
And I think then the whole idea of fewer mistakes, we're in the middle of just actually starting Farm Safety Week, so a very timely reminder of this and how training can help with some nasty accidents that we've read about recently. I've worked on, I'm working in the ag industry. I've worked on farms. Surely, there's some stalwarts who will resist some of this training. And why do we need this?
Well, the trick is, Isaac, not to enforce training on anybody. You can't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The trick is to create an environment where everyone wants to learn. And I think if we look at the next objective, how do you do it and what are the risks? This will just give you an idea of, or one idea of how you might do it. There's no prescription in this, like I say. This is just a description of kind of how I think things through, and the pitfalls that I observe and notice that can happen.
Excellent.
So what I'm going to just show you here is just another little business model, and some of you will have seen this before. I'm sure that some of you have heard of this one, but when somebody comes and starts on your farm and they've never seen a cow before, they basically start from a consciously incompetent standpoint. They're looking at you, scratching their head, thinking, what do we do here? And you or somebody in your business has got to tell them what to do. But then after a little while, they get to a stage where actually they know what they're doing, but they become what effectively is known as unconsciously incompetent, i.e. they think they know it all, but they really don't. And this is quite a dangerous stage, particularly if you've got people wandering around your parlour with antibiotic tubes in their hands, etc., etc. And it's a stage you should watch. Quite a good way of thinking about this is also as if you think of somebody learning a violin. When they first start, they know and you know that they sound bloody awful, and they hide themselves away in a room. But I'm sure that some of you will have got to a stage where you've had a family member who's unconsciously incompetent in learning the violin, and it sounds awful. I don't think my family have kept going with the violin long enough to actually get beyond this stage. Unfortunately, we don't have to do that now. But obviously, as one progresses, one becomes consciously competent. So it gets to a stage where actually the violin sounds a little bit better. The guy in the milking parlour actually does understand what a protocol is in English or in whatever language he happens to be working from, and they will start following it. And there also then gets to a stage where people then become unconsciously competent. One of our guys, our lead milker, he milks cows like nobody else I've seen, and he will fly through it, putting clusters on really, really quickly. The job gets done quickly, efficiently, to routine. Cows get milked out properly. He just knows exactly what he's doing, and it's a pleasure to see people moving through that cycle.
So, Jamie, and you've just described your guy that's now unconsciously competent. Does that mean, and he's now away and flying? He's all right to do every job on the farm?
Well, no. I mean, these sort of stages of development, and bearing in mind this is only a model, and models have sort of boundaries, so don't get too hung up on it. But these sort of stages actually are very job specific. So the guy who's absolutely brilliant at milking, for example, is probably further down the scale when it comes to foot trimming, for example. But again, that cycle begins. And another interesting thing with these is actually knowing what to do when people are in each different stage of it. So somebody who's unconsciously competent, well, they need to learn. So what do? You've got to teach. Just tell them what to do, show them how to do it. Nothing wrong with that. When they're unconsciously incompetent, well, there's actually something they need to see, or if it's the violin, there's something they need to hear. So you need to be a little bit tentative in your language and coach them to say, well, do you think that sounds quite right, or do you think that routine's actually working right? Look at that cow, is she milked out? Do not try and tell anyone who's unconsciously incompetent what to do. They will thump you. And then when they get consciously competent, they know what they're doing, but they're still going to have some questions. They're still going to want to ask you what to do. And so you just need to be there and support them. Back off a little bit, give them some space, give them a bit of control. If you don't, that will cause problems. And then when you get to the unconscious competent stage, it's your job to stand back and listen. They're the ones that need to teach. Incidentally, I think quite interesting on this slide is the bits that are written in red. You need to teach, you need to coach, you need to support, you need to listen. That itself are the levels that you need to learn in terms of management and leadership. So they in themselves have that progression as well.
So we've got a question, sorry, bring the mic closer to me. We've got a question come in, and the question says, this looks like more of a technical model. Is there any difference between technical and, say, somebody who's doing more soft skills? So if they're consciously competent, is that the consciously competent full stop, or is there a bit of a difference? They might have a different level for different skill sets. Have you got any examples of that?
Well, obviously technical skills are very, very tangible, and it's easy to measure them and assess them. The softer skills are not so, but as I just sort of said, the bits in red on this slide are soft skills. I mean, the ability to coach is actually quite a difficult ability, to be able to stand back and listen, ask questions, be tentative, not be directive, is actually quite a skill that is learnable and can be learned and needs to be learned. And any top effective manager will be able to sort of coach and support and listen, as well as be able to teach.
So, Jamie, what are the risks of developing people, and what are the risks of not developing people?
Well, that's quite interesting, Isaac. So the risks of developing a team. Well, you're trying to give people control, and it's really important that you give people control, because without that, what reason have they got to come into work? So, but the problem of giving control without developing ability is an absolute car crash. So put somebody in the parlour for 5 minutes and say, right, oh, you know what you're doing now, you're a lead milker, and you can guarantee that there will be antibiotics in the tank or some other kind of disaster very, very quickly. The flip side, if you build ability and you show people how to do things, they've done the Milkshaw qualification, they know everything, but you don't give them any control, they're not going to hang around long. I wouldn't hang around in that environment where I wasn't given freedom to actually run my own ship, as it were. So it's a kind of balance, and there's a bit of the sort of grey zone in the middle that if you're sort of subconsciously aware of, you know sometimes when to pull people back and give them a bit more support, or let them go forward and say, okay, well, you have a go at that now, and see how you get on. And interestingly, the model of growth that we've just been speaking about fits smack in the middle of that.
Excellent. And I guess, yeah, that frustration of people not progressing. And how do you manage that? How do you and where does that balance lie to move them forward?
Where does that balance lie to move them forward?
So moving them up, and so they've consciously competent, and how do you move them to the next step?
What I like to do more than anything is just create an environment where they're asking for the development themselves. I don't like pushing people and saying, well, you need to be doing this now, you need to be doing that. Although, of course, in conversation sometimes it comes up that certain skills need developing, but more often than not, I will find that my team will come to me and sort of say, well, look, I think so and so needs to go on an AI course, or we ought to get somebody in and doing some cow signals work here, and I will very rarely say no to a training request.
So if anybody of Jamie's team is listening to that, and you've got it on record. So there's various ways of recording training and doing it, and there's some examples there. But so how do you manage it on your farm?
So I mean, we do various things in terms of managing training. Just in the background, you need to have a bit of an idea of where people are at and what skills need developing for your business and your team, or as a whole team. So one of the things that we've been doing for years is a skills matrix. So all I've done here is listed out the main jobs that are on the farm. These are the milking ones. We have a lead milker, a second milker, parlour treatments and drying off cows. And then we've got a 6-man team on our dairy. So there's the unit manager, the assistant manager, and there's 4 team members, and they're all at various stages of development. The green means yes, fill your boots. You can do what you can do the job. You understand the protocols, and you're up to speed in that area. The red means absolutely not yet. You've just started, and the amber means you're learning. And it's quite good just to review that every 2 or 3 months. That's all we do. And it simply starts. This is just on the milking one, but we've got
Sorry, can I just ask a question on the previous? So how did you come up with the detail in each of those lines? So, so second milker needs to put on clusters, maintain a clean and consistent milking routine. How did you come up with the detail in that?
It's just thinking through your business. I mean, I've been in the business for 30 years now, and it's just thinking through what the business is about. It's nothing technical, nothing special. Just think about what are the roles in your business, what are the jobs that need doing. I mean, all of you will have various degrees of protocols, and any farmer will know what jobs are involved in this. But I mean, all I've done here, and I'm sure that many of you have done this as well, you just sort of sit down and listed them out and thought, well, who's good at that and who's not. Some of you will have recorded them like I have. Some of you will probably have systems that are far more effective and complex than what I'm doing.
And do you get the staff involved? Do you ask them, what are the levels that a lead milker should have, and do they add some of the?
Yeah, I mean, certainly initially when we set this up, we did, but that was some years ago now. But actually, the more time goes on, the less direct training management I do. Our herd manager is very capable of running and developing his team himself now, so I'm not really directly involved in doing the skills matrix. I will have a discussion with him once every 3 or 4 months, and we'll update it. But that's as far as it goes.
Okay, so your staff has taken ownership of this and running with it.
Yeah. So moving on, this is just very quickly the feeding one. Just by nature of the business, we have less people feeding the cows than milking them. So it's not quite so necessary to have quite so much green on that chart. This gets a bit more interesting. So this is the sort of softer skills with the cows. Well, we've got people who are out scraping out yards, they're cleaning beds. I want to make damn sure they know how to identify a downy cow or a sick cow, and they will report it. And so I'd like to see quite a lot of green on this chart. Even down the bottom there, we've got the knowing and understanding of cow signals. Again, I want to see a lot of green on that. And I think everyone has the ability to learn these things. I think traditionally, back in my father's day, that these skills are very much kept to the herdsman or the farmer. And if the farmer and the herdsman wasn't there, or they left, it left a big void in the business. We don't want voids in our business.
If somebody, if your herd manager came to you and said, X or Y, Jamie there, and he's at that level, I think he's ready to go. So does that happen? And how do you identify somebody going from a red to an amber, or amber to a green?
Just through discussion, really, and discussion with the people, discussion with them. We don't actually do formal appraisals. I mean, we do informal appraisals, and we sit down and we talk, but we don't have a formal appraisal system. I find that very, very stilted, and every time I sat down, right, well, I'm the big appraiser now, I felt quite self-conscious about that. So again, I'd rather have an informal discussion with people about where they're at and where they want to go, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in the office. It could be in the milking parlour or whatever. It's important that we keep in touch with where people are at and what they want to do, but it doesn't have to be a formal process.
And would you use this, so you'll go there to team member number 3 and say, so you're currently on an amber for downer and sick cows, and we've got a bit of training, or send to go and do some, whoever will do a bit of mentoring with you to move you to a green?
Potentially, yeah. But from where I'm at, it would normally be a conversation with the herd manager, and then he would organise what was required or what was needed.
Okay, so that responsibility has been delegated to that.
Again, yeah. And it's not in our business, as I said, we're not just cows. I mean, we've got a whole non-farming business as well, and we've got the crop side of that. So it's not just necessarily the houses, it's other parts of the business as well. And I think, Amy, you're going to talk a bit later on about skills matrix in other sectors. And I know that there's perhaps a few potato growers here or pig farmers, and it's important that this is not just cow related at all. The cows is just the example here.
Yeah.
Should we move on to that?
Yeah.
Where are we going? So I could go through some more of these, but let's have a look. For example, one of the skills matrix for a crop technician.
Yeah. So as Jamie said, I guess the template is the thing we're looking at, really, the skills matrix template. And the idea being is if you can highlight in your business what are the appropriate skills to make your business work. And something that we've done at AHDB is work with the industry to help create skills matrix. Now, these were originally written for apprenticeships, for employees taking on apprenticeship students, to identify what is required for a crop technician. We've got a stock person as well. And it's just, as you can see on there, the KSB statement, which is knowledge, skills and behaviour. What's needed in that business for that person to excel and for your business to take that value back. So this is the crop technician one, and you can see the link at the bottom of the page. So you can go onto our website and download this template. I think the most important thing, similar to sort of Jamie's got colour codes on his, we've got, you know, a tick box or a date for when they've completed that particular skill. Is it's got to suit your business, so you can tailor all of these skills to suit your business, or you can utilise some of these and use them as you wish. So the next one we've got that's the crop technician. We also have one here. This is on our pork website. So the pork skills matrix sample. This goes through the different areas on the tabs at the bottom of the page. It's a lot more detail. So personally, when I've been working with some of the farmer groups on skills matrix, we start off with a more simple template to kind of take on board the culture of identifying skills and assessing competencies against those skills. And then the more you do, the more you'll reap the benefits from. So for the pork matrix, we've got a lot more detail there. So yeah, just starting that. And then finally, the other sort of way of identifying what training is needed is this training needs analysis tool. So once again, we've got a link there. This is the one that we've been using recently and has been working really well because it's linked directly with the stock person, the crop technician apprenticeship, and the skills matrix there. And so this is just a self-assessment questionnaire, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's you click on there, you answer some questions, and it identifies where you'll need further training or where you're doing pretty well. So just summarising, when you're looking at sort of the skills matrix and where you need training, it's identifying first and foremost in your business and that particular role what skills are needed for that individual to add a lot of benefit to your business, you know, what makes them competent. And as we highlighted earlier, we are in Farm Safety Week. There will be certain things that you need to do as a basic to meet health and safety. And if you've got a tool that helps you identify that and helps you identify where you need to focus your training, then, you know, it shows you where you can put your investments. So that's the training needs now. So I'm going to pass over to Jamie to talk us more through this.
So Jamie, you obviously spend a lot of time and invest a lot of effort into training your team, but then how do you record it? You know, is that just all over the place?
Generally, most of the things that I do are on Spreadsheet. That's just simply because I quite like using spreadsheets, but I really wouldn't prescribe any particular way of doing things. But I think just one or two things to highlight that are important though. For example, here that we've got a guy with no driving license. Well, actually, it's quite important that's highlighted, and the rest of the team know that. And also, when it comes to the health and safety things like the telehandler course, what date people have been on it, and how far away is it from before they need to go on the next one. So the things I've got in the colours there are just coming up for renewal. So it's as simple as that, really.
Okay. Do you put a budget aside for training your staff?
Generally not. We will spend money on training where training is due. What I think I tend to find is the payback on it is so damn quick that actually it's not something that needs to be limited. I mean, if somebody came to me and sort of said, well, you know, I want to go on the 3 or 4 year management training course at the cost of £10,000, I'd probably think, well, is there a cost effective or a more cost effective way of doing that? I won't put a prescriptive budget on how much money we put into our team.
Excellent. And what about some recognition of training? So how would you do that?
We use Dairy Pro. I'm on the steering committee for Dairy Pro. I think this is a very good nationally recognised system. Still very much in development, but I think as time goes on, a lot of the things I'm doing on Spreadsheet here will be able to be recorded very professionally on Dairy Pro, and that will show due diligence for the milk bars as well. That will help our relationship with the people who are buying our milk, and it will also help that our employees to learn, and of course our employees are not going to stay with us forever. I mean, there's a career progression to be had, so to actually give them an ability to show the training and development they've had through our business is very useful to them, although obviously you've got that risk of, you know.
Yeah, if you train them and they leave, that's one thing, but if you don't train them and they stay, that's probably a bigger risk.
Yeah, indeed.
And just to add what Jamie has just said, and one of the bits that do fall under me is Dairy Pro, and we're currently trialing basically what Jamie had on his spreadsheet in the previous slide, and it's a bit of an HR function. So that is currently on a couple of farms. We are trialing that and just getting some to grips of what exactly is the requirements out there. But you know, so watch the space, and hopefully that will take some, you know, a big load off you. Of course, there's a load of other ways of recognizing it. There's Pig Pro, there's Basis, Neroso, City and Guilds, and Lantra, and you know, so use whatever fits your system, or send, like Jamie, a spreadsheet. But you know, it's important to recognize the training and record it. So, Jamie, can you just summarize for us and what we've talked about this evening?
So why training development doesn't happen? Well, in my opinion, it's a lot of it is a planning issue, or it's not scheduled, it's not seen as important. I found it to be extremely important in our business, and actually giving the delegating the control, etc., has worked very, very well. Benefits of developing a team, well, basically business success. Work-life balance gets better, everyone gets involved, it's a better atmosphere all around. But there are risks, and if you get it wrong, it can be a fairly chaotic environment, which is what you don't want. How do you do it? We went through the sheet of how you did it, the slide of how you did it with the unconsciously competent to consciously competent. But to put that in one sentence is carefully build ability and delegate control. I think just a point I'd like to make here, incidentally, is that a lot of people sort of say to me, "Oh, recruitment's a real problem these days. You know, how do you get hold of people and what do you do?" Well, I can tell you that there probably isn't more than one person in our dairy team who had actually milked a cow before they arrived at Whitewall Farm. And I think if you've got a decent system or approach to training and developing in your business, that fear of not being able to get somebody to do the job gets a lot less. Now, I'm not sort of saying that you won't get a couple of people leave and find yourself hard and fast in the milking parlour for a lot of times. At times, that's, of course, stuff happens. No system is going to get you away from those sort of things. But if you've got a system in place, if you are doing things, and I'm sure that many of you are, and I've just shown you tonight what I do, and as I say, it's completely not prescriptive, but it does take a lot of that fear away. And how do you manage it? Well, record and review, and being on the steering committee of Dairy Pro, I'd suggest that would be a great place to start.
Excellent, thank you, JB. I'll hand over to Amy, but for any of you that's out there who's got nothing better to do, you can stay tuned and we'll discuss that super over.
Not quite yet. Thank you both. Thank you, Jamie and Isaac. It was very, very interesting. I'm just waiting for a few questions to come in. So I'm just going to remind you all that the presentation is being recorded and it's going to be available to watch on our HDB YouTube channel later this week. We've got Luke in the background. He's doing an amazing job on that. There are other webinars relating to skills, relating to labour efficiency on there. So have a little look and see what's there. You'll also find that the skills matrix templates will be available on our website. So I'm going to get kicked off. We've got quite a few questions come through. So sorry. Okay, so we talked quite a lot about the skills matrix. Do you have any problems introducing the matrix into your business? What does the employees make of it in particular? So I'm going to try not to move this as much.
Well, it's kind of not something I introduce or put in people's face. If anything, as much as anything, it's just a back-end guide for myself as to who's where. I will discuss it through with our unit manager, and between us, we'll then work out a plan for each individual. And there are times where we put it up on the screen and we sort of said, well, this is where we are now, and this is where we want to be in 6 months' time, and that's kind of work. But there's no prescription. There's no right or wrong way to do that.
Good, thank you. The next question we've got is, we've talked quite a lot about dairy, which is good, it's your background, but is this training programme and the matrix used on the arable and the diversified enterprises?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, very much so. Particularly, my brother runs the crops enterprise, and he does that very, very effectively. There's a small team in there, and he's training and developing that team. The non-farming enterprise, we have yurts and huts for glamping. We've got a fly fishery, we've got a self-storage business, and now we're busy developing corporate events and corporate leadership products. So it's highly complex, and in many parts of it, I'm quite incompetent in learning some of the skills there. So I then become into that matrix, and it's equally as important, if not more so, in some of these more complex businesses.
Good. So in line with that, we've actually got a question, which is quite a good one. Do you and your brother consider what further development you need and what's on the horizon? Do you do much, like you just described, looking forward and thinking we're going to be a bit more innovative, and that's a different type of skill set we need to look at?
We need to be more innovative. Yes, absolutely, we do. I've always been forever looking at ways of improving my management abilities and ways of doing it. And everyone's got strengths and weaknesses, and everyone's got blind spots. And I'm sure my team would be shouting down the other side of the webinar right now, yeah, he's still talking about that, or there's something that I'm probably not seeing. So it's really important that you include yourself in the training and the development as well. And I've just turned 50, and I think I'm still quite a newbie at management and leadership.
Good. Okay, we seem to have one more question. So what do you see as the biggest challenges coming up in the next 10 years to do with, the issues you're going through, how employing people and retaining them when we are going through quite a huge issue on labour shortage? So it's a big one.
I think that probably the biggest challenge is creating the environment where people want to do the job. As you know, dairy farming can be a pretty gutty job. Traditionally, it's always been long hours, early mornings, late finishes, and it's just finding an environment where you've got that sort of balance between the job getting done, being able to do it efficiently, because we're having to do it under very tight margins, and also having people motivated to actually do that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jamie. We really appreciate that, and thank you, Isaac, as well. We do really appreciate with your pink shirt. And for anyone who wants to see this pink shirt, we have tweeted a picture of it, so get online. So thank you again, and thanks to everybody who's tuned in. We really appreciate you joining us on a very busy evening, and it's gorgeous weather outside. So just keep an eye out on our website for future webinars similar to this, and we will be sending around a link for the resources that we've discussed. A very special thanks again to Jamie and Isaac for taking the time out, and thank you, Luke. I think we've tried to keep the technical issues at bay. There might have been a few that he managed to sort out, and yes, so we look forward to speaking with you all soon at another webinar. So thank you very much and good evening.
Thank you.